so did you know that a trespasser on your property can become the owner of property that you actually paid for? Well, if you didn't know that and you plan to own property or you already own property, then this presentation is something you want to pay close attention to. So adverse possession is the term we'll be talking about. That's a legal term. And it's a legal term that I learned about in my first year of law school. It's a very complex term, so I'm only going to go over the basics of it, just enough for you to understand what adverse possession is and how to protect against it. So we're going to go over the whats and the whys of adverse possession, and we're going to be talking about how a person might adverse possess your land, and then we're going to talk about how you can protect against it, okay? So, according to Charette, adverse possession converts the criminal trespasser into the owner of actual property that they didn't pay for. So, the successful adverse possessor trespasses and holds the land. They hold a piece of property, whether it's a house or a piece of land, for a period of time that's written in the law of the state. And then the trespasser becomes the owner after holding the land that way. So, adverse possession dates back to the end of feudalism. Feudalism was a time where the king owned all of the land, and at the end of feudalism, the land was redistributed to the individuals, and prior to feudalism, it had belonged to other individuals. So what happened was the old individuals wanted to come back and reclaim the land from the new individuals. So what the king did was create adverse possession to block ancient claims. It said that if the old owners didn't come back in a certain period of time, then they couldn't reclaim the land. The land actually belonged to the new owners. So how did it get here to the United States and then America? Well, it traveled to America, according to Charette, with the colonists. According to Charette, some scholars actually believe that the colonists were the first adverse possessors when they adversely possessed the land that Native Americans already rightfully owned. The Supreme Court codified or made law adverse possession in Johnson v. McIntosh when they said that if a true owner was not using the land in a productive way, and if somebody came in and was using it correctly and productively, then they could have it. So, let me tell you how someone can come in and trespass in your house and actually own your house. So, they must complete these 5 steps. When I was in law school, Professor Edwards taught me this: all old horses eat corn, in order for me to remember the first letter of each of these elements. So in law school, we call it elements, but you can call them steps. So the first step is actual. According to the Manual Law Outlines, actual requires that you have to have possession of a reasonable percentage. So you can't have possession of one room in the house. It might mean that you have to have possession over 50% of the house. Or if you're on somebody's property, you have to have possession over half of the property or a good portion of the property. Further, the legaldictionary.net says that physical possession is required. It means you can't just look at the property. You actually have to be on the property and be using the property in order to have this step met. Step 2, open and notorious. Open and notorious, according to the property book, 8th edition, requires that that the trespasser comes in and uses the land in such or the property in such a way that the true owner would be on notice, that they would see them if they were looking for them, or that they would be observable by someone like a neighbor. So if I was mowing the lawn at my house that I'm trespassing at, someone would see me mowing the lawn. If I were entering and leaving, they would see me entering and leaving. Okay, so step 3, hostile. Hostile doesn't mean angry or upset or anything like that. Hostile actually means, according to legaldictionary.net, that I show the intent to hold the property, meaning I'm not going to let anybody come in and take my property from me, even though I'm trespassing. And further, the person actually believes they're the true owner. So against anybody else, they believe that they're the one who owned it. Even if they didn't pay for it, I'm the owner. So step 4, exclusive. It's probably the one that's most self-explanatory. It's when the possession is not shared. So it's exclusive to the trespasser. They're not letting anyone else come on the land according to NOLO.com. So no use by the true owner or the general public can be allowed in order for this element to be met. So that means the owner can't come in. Anytime the owner re-enters the property, then this element's not met and the person cannot become the owner. Step 5, continuance. Continuance just means that the trespasser continues to use the property like it's supposed to be used for a period of time set by law. So what the trespasser does, the trespasser starts to be on the property, they continue to hold the property for a number of years specified by law, and then they become the owner. So that's how they become an adverse possessor. So let me tell you how you can protect against that, because they have to meet all 5 of those steps. If you do any of these things I tell you about, then you will be able to protect your property. Be vigilant. Watch out for those who would squat on or regularly use your property. Look for somebody to be on your property you're not using. Create deterrents. Put up signs. No trespassing. This blocks them from being able to get adverse possession of your property. Give the trespasser your permission. So say you have a cabin in the woods you only use once a year, so you don't realize that someone's in that cabin. But when you realize they're there, say, hey, I give you permission to stay, because guess what? If you give them permission, they can't never be an owner of it. Same thing with an empty apartment. If you find someone squatting in your apartment, and they don't give you permission, if you give them permission to be there, guess what? They can't ever become the owner of that property. Call the authorities, serve notice. Tell them, anytime you give notice or recognize the person is in there and you give them a warning, then they can't adversely possess the property. So, finally, get some legal help if you find yourself in this position where somebody's adversely possessing your property. So as I said in the beginning, this is a very complex term, but hopefully today you got out of this how to protect your property and exactly what adverse possession is. Thank you.